We're
Hi
not ready
guys,
yet.
so
We're not ready yet. We just wait till people come
it's
in.
live stream.
It is live
It's already
stream.
live stream.
It's okay. We're gonna wait till our time. It's 5:30. It's not 5:30 yet. We can get ready. What are you doing?
I don't know. Okay. Okay.
You're live, Mia.
I know.
Okay. Okay, let's go. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Well, this is Tanya and Malia. My name is Tanya Miller, and this is Malia Larson. We are going to be reading for the month of February. And tonight, our book that we're going to be reading is called Martin's Big Words. This is one of Malia's favorite books. This is actually the front of the book, but the title is actually on the back. Martin's Big Words, The Life of Dr. Martin Luther King. And this is by Doreen Rappaport, illustrated by Brian Collier. So this is what we're going to be reading tonight, okay?
Woohoo!
And we are ready to get started.
Okay.
All you need to do is read, Malia. Don't worry about that. They can't see it.
Martin's Big Words. Woohoo! Martin's Big Words. The life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Everywhere in Martin's hometown, he saw the signs white only. His mother said these signs were all in the southern cities and towns in the United States. Every time Martin read those words, he felt bad, until he remembered what his mother told him. You are as good as anyone. In church, Martin sang hymns. He read from the Bible. He listened to his father preach. These words made him feel good. When I grow up, I'm going to get big words too. Martin grew up. He became a minister like his father. He used the big words he had heard as a child from his parents and from the Bible. Everyone can be great.
You need to speak up a little bit, okay?
He studied the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He learned how the Indian nation won freedom without ever firing a gun. He said love when others said hate. He cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Come on. Okay. He said togethers when others said separate. He said peace when others said war. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together. My video's off.
It's okay. No, they can see.
No, they can't. My video's off. Look.
Oh. How did it come off?
I don't know. You gotta.
Say no up there. Say no up there. Go up there. Are you sure you want to cancel? Hit cancel.
Cancel. Internet issues.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, that was my fault.
In 1955, on a cold December day in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was coming home from work. A white man told her to get up from her seat on the bus so he could sit. She said no and was arrested. Montgomery black citizens learned of her arrest. It made them angry. They decided to not ride the bus until they could sit anywhere they wanted. For 381 days, they walked to work and school and church. They walked in the rain, cold, and blistering heat. Martin walked with them, talked with them, sang with them, and prayed with them. Until the white city leaders had to agree they could sit anywhere they wanted. When the history books are written, someone will say, there lived black people who had the courage to stand up for themselves, for their rights. In the next 10 years, Black Americans all over the South protested for equal rights. Martin walked with them, talked with them, sang with them, and prayed with them. White ministers told them to stop. Mayors and governors and police chiefs and judges ordered them to stop, but they kept on marching. Wait, for years I have heard the word wait. We have waited more than 340 years for our rights. They were jailed and beaten and murdered, but they kept on marching. Some Black Americans wanted to fight back with their fists. Martin convinced them not to, by reminding them the power of love. Love is the key to the problems of the world. Many white Southerns hated and feared Martin's words. A few threatened to kill him and his family. His house was bombed. His brother's house was bombed, but they refused to stop. Remember, if I am stopped, this movement will not be stopped because God is with this movement. The marches continued. More and more Americans listened to Martin's words. He shared his dreams and filled them with hope. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. After 10 years of protests, the lawmakers in Washington voted to end segregation, and the white only signs in the South came down. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. cared about all Americans. He cared about people all over the world, and people all over the world admired him. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He won it because he taught others to fight with words, not fists. Martin went wherever people needed help. In April 1968, he went to Memphis, Tennessee to he went to help garbage collectors who were on strike. He walked with them, talked with them, sang with them, and prayed with them. On his second day there, he was shot. He died. His big words are still alive for us today. Important dates.
Important dates. I'll read the important dates. I'll read the important dates. You want to? Okay, go ahead.
I thought
Okay.
I'm confused.
She wants to read the important dates. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. January 15th, 1929, Martin Luther King Jr. is born in Atlanta, Georgia. June 18th, 1953, Coretta Scott and Martin Luther King Jr. are married. May 17th, 1954, in Brown v. Topeka?
Brown versus Topeka Board of Education. Let me read some of these, okay? Okay, these are important dates. I'm going to go ahead and read them. Important dates. January 13th, 1929, Martin Luther King Jr. is born in Atlanta, Georgia. June 18th, 1953, Coretta Scott and Martin Luther King Jr. are married. May 17th, 1954, in Brown versus Topeka Board of Education, United States Supreme Court declares racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. November 17th, 1955, Yolanda Denise King is born. December 5th, 1955 to December 21st, 1956, Montgomery boycott. January 10th through 11th, 1957, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference is founded and Dr. Martin Luther King is chosen president. February 1st, 1960, the first sit-in in Greensboro, North Carolina. January 30th, 1961, Dexter Scott King is born. November 1961 through August 1962, Albany, Georgia, protest movement. March 28th, 1963, Bernie Alberta King is born. April through May 1963, Birmingham, Alabama, protest movement. August 28th, 1963, Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech at the top of the Dr. Martin Luther King's speech at the March on Washington. January 23rd, 1964, the 24th Amendment eliminates the poll tax in federal elections. July 2nd, 1964, the Civil Rights Act is signed prohibiting discrimination in public accommodations and in employment. December 10th, 1964, Dr. King is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. January through March 1965, Selma, Alabama, protest movement. August 6, 1965, the voting right becomes law. April 4th, 1968, Dr. King is assassinated. April 11th, 1968, President Johnson signs the second Civil Rights Act. October 19th, 1981, the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolence Change, also called the King Center, opens in Atlanta, Georgia. November 22nd, 1982, United States approves the erection of monument to Dr. King in Washington, D.C. January 15th, 1986, Dr. King's birthday is celebrated as a national holiday for the first time. Okay, Malia just read Martin's Big Words, The Life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by Doreen Rappaport. Someone in the comments just asked, where can you get this book, Sierra? My husband actually bought this book at a
antique shop.
Yes, at an antique store on South Tacoma Way. they have lots of books in there. So we have gotten several of our books from the antique store. Just a minute. So we have several African American Black history books from that store on South Tacoma Way, not far from the BNI, but we picked up a lot of the books there. And then I've purchased some from the Borders bookstore in Lakewood. And believe it or not, most of the books we have about 30 books here. These books, most of the books that we're going to be reading came from the Pierce County Library, and you can check out 100 books at once, and you can just extend them as long as you need, as long as no one else is asking for that particular book on reserve, you can keep the book. So, but this book is from the antique store, and there was something what I found in one of the books that we bought in the antique store. It was actually from the Puyallup School District, so it must have been a book they took out of circulation, and it was sold at the antique shop. But she has something to say.
And also, so I realized in one of the pages. Let me see real fast. It's close. Like it's. Trying to find it right here. In this down here, it says it was from the Puyallup Public Library. So, yeah. I guess
Okay.
the antique shop got it from there.
Okay. So we have a little bit of time. We kind of allowed like 30 to 45 minutes to read a book. And that one went kind of quick, which is great because I wanted to read some timeline information. Swap seats with me, baby. Just swap. Swap. Okay, just swap seats with me.
Ow.
Go ahead.
You can get Martin's
Go,
Big
Mia.
Words on Amazon.
So I wanted to actually go over some timelines, and which is great that we're actually ahead of our time. I didn't know we'd get through that one so quickly. But the timeline that I wanted to review, so we can get some kind of historical context of how we actually got here to where we are now, is to kind of go over a timeline. Now, this book, Sierra, if you want to know, this book actually came from the Borders bookstore in Lakewood, and it has a timeline. Don't screw anything up over there. So this it's called Timelines from Black History, Leaders, Legends, and Legacies. But I just want to go over some of these timelines here because we still have a lot of time. Again, we'll come to you every night, and we're just reading for about 30, 45 minutes. I am live streaming on Facebook right now and YouTube, and I'll see how the platform goes. When we first announced it last week, I posted the video 3 times, and Facebook took it down 3 times. So I don't know what their issue was. It's still in a challenge situation right now. So in the event that Facebook takes these readings down, we can go on YouTube or we could do Zoom. But right now, this will be the platform. But so I'm going to go over these timelines, and we all know that African Americans. Well, we are African Americans, but our ancestors came here as enslaved Africans, and so I'm going to read some of the timelines for you. So this all started with cheap labor, and it came off the backs of our ancestors. So in 1619, cheap labor, the first 20 American prisoners arrived in Jamestown in Virginia. Slaves are a cheaper source of labor than contracted servants who can eventually earn their freedom. 1636, slave ships. The city of Boston plays a major part in the slave trade. The first American slave ship, Desire, is built here in 1638. The first enslaved people are brought to Boston from the West Indies, along with cotton and tobacco. 1662, the life of slavery. In Virginia, the General Assembly passed a law stating that any children born to an enslaved mother will also become an enslaved person for life. Most slaveholding colonies of that state go on to enact similar laws that discriminate by race. 1688, Quaker protests. In Pennsylvania, Quakers protest against slavery. The Quakers are Christians who believe in treating others fairly. Later, the Quaker Church prevents members from profiting from the slave trade and from owning enslaved people. 1694, plantations of rice. Rice is introduced in South Carolina. It takes a lot of work to grow, so European settlers need slave labor to tend the crops and help them make it profitable. By around 1710, there are more enslaved Africans in the state than Europeans. Okay. 1731, Freedom, Florida. Runaway enslaved people get their freedom in the Spanish territory of Florida. They must give their loyalty to Spain and join the Catholic Church. Many settle in St. Augustine, the oldest European city in the United States. What, baby? Okay, yes. Okay. 1772, The Life of a Slave. The first slave narrative, a story written by a formerly enslaved person about the experience of slavery, is written in New York. Many more slave narratives follow, one of the most famous of which is written by Frederick Douglass in 1845. 1804, the Underground Railroad. Formerly enslaved people and allies helped start the Underground Railroad, a network of safe houses and people who assist runaway enslaved people. Its Grand Central Station is established in Indiana. As many as 2,000 enslaved people crossed to freedom there. 1819, freedom in Canada. The Canadian Attorney General, principal lawyer there, says that all formerly enslaved people living in Canada are free and will be protected by law. Settlers are also not allowed to bring enslaved people into the country. Also in 1819, end of trade. The United States passes a law that takes the country out of the slave trade and sends ships to Africa to help rescue enslaved people from enslavers and return them to their homeland. Slave ownership is still legal in most of the southern United States. 1850, Sojourner Truth. Born into slavery, Sojourner Truth becomes a leading abolitionist and spokesperson for women's rights. She gives a famous speech in Ohio that highlights the need for rights for Black women as well as men. 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin and the Abolitionist Movement. The novel Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe sells many thousands of copies and changes people's opinion of slavery. Her book helps the abolitionist cause, but tensions between the North and the South escalate. The Civil War, 1861. The debate over whether or not new slaves should be enslaved people splits the country in two. Northern victory in this 4-year conflict ends slavery, but more than 600,000 people lose their lives. You're blocking the light, I can't see. Emancipation Proclamation, 1863. All enslaved people in the South are declared free on January 1st in President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. This marks a turning point for the war, as Lincoln confirms that the war is a war for freedom, thus strengthening the Union's resolve. Slavery abolished, 1865. The Emancipation Proclamation frees enslaved people, but does not end slavery itself. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution brings a permanent end to slavery in all of the United States, including new territories. It remains legal, however, as a punishment for crime. Since 1619, tens of millions of enslaved people had died as a result of slavery. Okay, so Malia wants to read this part. And this really is about the slave triangle, and I'm trying to show you a picture, but it shows you here is Europe, here is Africa, West Africa, and the focus is West and Central Africa here. And then here is the South America, West Indies, North America. So it talks about the triangle, the slave trade, iron and clothing material being traded for slaves in Africa, put on ships, bought to the West Indies, traded here for coffee, tea, and some other things. So it talks about the slave triangle, the slave trade. So she wants to read that part. Yeah, nice and clear. Go ahead. You can sit there. Go ahead.
Why, hello again. Okay. So I'll be reading the slave triangle. Yeah. At least 10 million Africans were taken of the Americas.
We're taking in here.
Hey. At least 10 million Africans were taken to the Americas. In a triangle of trade. Ships in Britain carried manufactured goods such as cloth, ironware, and guns to West Africa. These were exchanged for enslaved men, women, and children. The conditions on the sea crossing to the West Indies were brutal, and many enslaved people did not survive them. Those who did not sold at action.
Start a sentence over.
Those who did were sold at auctions. And the profits were used to buy sugar, cotton, rum, and tobacco to take back to Britain.
Okay. All right.
North America, Europe,
okay.
Africa.
Okay, so that's just a little quick timeline. A little timeline from 1619, and then it talks about here about how the when I was younger they call it the transatlantic slave trade route, but here they call it the triangle. But it talks about how the ship will leave Europe, go to West Africa, and the slaves were mainly from West Africa and Central Africa, and how they would board the ship and load them like sardines and travel with the enslaved people on the ship, coming across here in front of South America, going by West Indies, which is an important part of the slave trade, and then bringing them here to America, landing over in Vermont. Okay, and I think that's really all we have for now. We will come back again tomorrow.
It's only 5:20.
I know, we're actually reading kind of fast. Tomorrow we will be reading
God's Tree.
no, I don't see it. It's a different one.
What is it?
I don't see it. Oh, it's on the floor. It fell on the floor. Tomorrow we are going to be reading a book called the 1619 Project. Life, let's see, Born on the Water. Give me here.
Born on the Water.
Okay, so this book is called the 1619 Project, if you can see it. The 1619 Project, Born on the Water. And it actually, it's a little small book, but it goes on to talk about the first child that was born here in America to enslaved people. So he would be considered the actual first African American. When I grew up, the term was Black. Now it's African American. So he would be the first Black child born here in America. So it talks about him. His name is Mr. Tucker. So we will come back tomorrow at 5:30, and this is the book we will be reading. Sierra actually got this one at Borders. But this is actually a snippet of the actual book. There is a novel called 1619 Project by the same author, Nicole Hannah-Jones. It's a really thick book, and it's very detailed. We don't have time for that because we only want to allow like 30 to 45 minutes to read. So we've got books that we can kind of get through in that time frame. But it's a good read. We have about 30 books here.
Yeah, we
So-
have 28 days.
Yeah, we have 28 days and we have more than 28 books, but it's all good because we'll continue to read and just empower your children. Let them know their heritage. We know that they're not getting it at school. Malia wore braids last week when she first got them done, and she was
Yeah.
kind of bullied and kind of talked about at school over her braids. And we had a conversation, and I asked her, "What are you going to do?" And she goes, "Well, I'm going to wear my braids." So we have to empower our children. We have to let them know their history. So when people come at them with things about their hair, their lips, their fullness, they already know that. There's nothing that can really offend them. They already know what they're like. So it's important for them to learn their history, and we know that they are not going to get it in school. I think the most that they learn right now is Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Those are
We
about
don't
the
learn
two.
Rosa Parks.
You don't learn Rosa Parks? Okay, I've been
If we
corrected.
talk about Rosa Parks, it's when it's in Martin's Big Words, because that's the
Oh,
it
it's
is
in
the only
okay.
book.
Okay, I stand corrected. If they talk about Rosa Parks, it's because of Martin Luther King, but they don't talk about like anything else. So, Black history is very minimalized in school, obviously. Let's teach our kids. Let's empower them about their history, and just let them know, with the immigration crisis and things like that. We didn't have the choice. We didn't immigrate here. We were bought here. Our ancestors were bought here. They didn't have those choices. So we're going to be reading a couple books about that, about actually this one here tomorrow, and Life on the Water, Born on the Water, and how they had to change their language, how they had to communicate, and how they had to adapt to being enslaved people coming from their country, continental Africa, and their homeland. All right. So thank you guys for joining us. We will be back to what, baby?
And also before we go, we gotta do one last thing.
What, man?
A shout out. You know we have to do a shout out.
Okay. This is a different computer.
Okay.
So you want to shout out to those two people?
Okay. So our two shout outs are my Uncle Tim and Tim Miller and Sierra Martin.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow at 5:30, and our read tomorrow will be
Born on the Water.
the 1619 Project, Born on the Water. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, you can end it, baby. Okay. Okay.